May ha'esh yotza v'ha'esh tochlem. And the from the fire of Torah they have departed. Therefore, the fire of hell will consume them. Okay. Omer Rav Kiyasa Rav Dimi Omer Rav Yochanan. When Rav Dimi came to Bavel from Eretz Yisrael, he quoted Rav Yochanan. Kol haporesh atzmo midivrei Torah. Anyone who separates himself from the words of Torah, nafal begehenim, will descend into hell. Shenemar, as it says in a pasuk, Adam toeh mederech haskel. A man who goes off, who deviates from the path of intelligence, of wisdom, which of course is the Torah. Bekahal Raphaim Yanuach will wind up in the congregation of Raphaim. V'ein Raphaim el Gehenim, and the word Raphaim is always a reference to hell. Shenemar v'lo yada ki Raphaim sham, and he didn't know that that's where Raphaim is. Be amke shoel karuecha, and in the depths of hell are the people who are invited by the Raphaim. Okay, going back to the Mishnah, we learned that in some cases the objects associated with something are automatically included in a sale, and sometimes not, right? And it depends on the shita. It also depends on the wording used by the buyer and seller. But the Mishnah says, mocher ashba, mocher zivla, etc. If you buy a garbage dump, your purpose in buying the garbage dump was to get the valuable stuff in it, which in this case is the animal manure, which can be used for fertilizer. So you wouldn't buy the garbage dump unless the manure goes along. Tana Hassam, we learn in another Mishnah, and now we're going to talk. This is a slight deviation. It's related, but it's not immediately the same. If you donate something to the Beis HaMikdash, in other words, you're makdish something, what does that mean? If I give, for example, we're going to learn a chicken coop, a pigeon coop. Do the pigeons in it go along with the pigeon coop, or am I giving an empty pigeon coop, even though there are pigeons in it? Secondly, what if I give an empty pigeon coop and then later on some pigeons fly in? Are they automatically hekdesh? Another possibility, I give a field and grass grows on it. So there, it's a little different, because there the grass is deriving nutrients directly from the field. Masha Enkain, the pigeon is just getting out of the rain. Okay, so we're going to go into various cases and various permutations. And the issue is, we know that if you take from Hekdesh, you violate a rule called Me'ila. So if you take the contents, are you also violating Me'ila? Tanan Hassam, we learn in another Mishnah, Kol Haroi Lemizave Lesmaz. Sorry. Kol Haroi Lemizbeach. Anything that you donate to the temple that's fit to go on the Mizbeach. That would mean a kosher, unblemished animal as a korban, or a bird, or wine, or that's used for nesachim, or flour that's used for minchas. The lob lebedek abayis, but that object is not appropriate for bedek abayis, for upkeep of the temple, or lebedek abayis v'lo lemizbeach, or you donate something suitable for bedek abayis, money, other kalim, but they're not usable on the altar. Lo lebedek abayis, or you make a contribution that's not fit for either, like land. You can't, the temple has to dispose of the land, or you have to redeem the land. Okay? Moalin behem ubamesh b'toichan. It is me'ila if you misappropriate the donated object, and it is also me'ila if you misappropriate whatever is contained therein. Okay? So, Ketzad, how does all that work? Bor Malaya Mayim, if you give a cistern that is full of water, or Ashbo Malaya Zevel, or a dump full of manure, or Shaivech Malay Yainim, or a dovecote, a pigeon coop with pigeons inside, Soda Malaya Asavim, or a field with grass growing on it, Elon Nasoi Peros, or a tree that has ripe fruit thereon. Moyalin behem b'mesha b'taychen. It's me'ila if you utilize the pit or the tree to take wood from the tree for kindling. And it's also me'ila if you take the pomegranate or the grapes off the tree. Okay, now we go weiter. Avo, makdish bor v'akakach nismole mayim. If I donate an empty pit, an empty cistern to the Beis HaMikdash, but then rainwater comes and fills it, okay? Or ashba v'achakach nismale zevel, or I give a place designated for an ashba, and that subsequently I deposit the manure and other garbage there. Or shoivek v'achakach nismale yonim, or there are two pigeon coops side by side. One's full, one's empty. And I donate the empty one, and then the pigeons decide they need more room, they move in. Okay? Elon v'achakach nasa peras, or I give a tree in the autumn after the fruit has been harvested, and next spring it grows new fruit. So it grows after I give it. So that the achakach nismale asavim, or the field, and later on grows grass. Moilin behen, you putting up a tent on the field would be me'ila. Okay, v'yein moelim b'moshe b'saychan, but taking the pigeon, or taking the grass, or taking the pomegranate would not be me'ila. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, that's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Rabbi Yossi Yomer, hamakdish esasoda v'esa ilon, the tree and the field, according to Rabbi Yossi, are different. Moelin behen ugedulohen. There, because the nutrients come from the soil which you gave to Mikdash, or from the fruit grows from the tree that you gave to the Mikdash, those are different, and there the grass and the fruit are, or similar, would be subject to Me'ila, Mipnei Shehen Gedulei Hektish, because they derive their nutrients and they're growing from Hektish. So that's that. Now we're going to go, that was all one long Mishnah. Now we're going on to a Brisa that explains the difference between the reason why Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi in the Mishnah disagree. Tanya, we have a Brisa associated with that Mishnah. Omer Rebbe, Nirin Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, Babor Uveshoivach. I think, says Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, that Rabbi Yehuda, who says the content's not included if it comes in later, makes sense when it comes to the pit or the bird cage. Divrei Rabbi Yossi v'sada b'ilon, but I agree with Rabbi Yossi when it comes to the tree and the field and the tree. Hi, my. So what is Rebbe telling us? Bishleiman near in Divrei Rav Yehuda Babur V'Shoivech statement that regarding the cistern and the pigeon coop makes sense. Miklal the polig asoida ve'ilon. So therefore, he is saying the fruit is not me'ila by the tree, and he's arguing with Rabbi Yossi. Ella, near in Divrei Rabbi Yossi Besoda ve'ilan, but Rabbi then says, but I agree, it makes sense, the words of Rabbi Yossi when it comes to the field and the tree, Miklal the polig babur v'shoivech. So implication is that Rabbi Yossi would also say that the water in the cistern or the dung in the dump are not me'ila. He's arguing with Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, Rabbi Yossi sort of Ilan Omar, but is it a fact that Rabbi Yossi wasn't referring to them, the pigeon coop or the cistern? All he was talking about were the tree and the field. Is that correct? If you want to try and tell me, L'divorav Rabbi Yehuda Omar, he is saying to Rabbi Yehuda, even though you hold that the pigeons that fly in don't become me'ila, but you should agree with me that the fruit that grows because it sucks nutrients from the tree should be considered me'ila. That's wrong too. To Sanya, because we have a different brisa. Omer Rabbi Yossi, Ein ani roa divrei shel Rabbi Yehuda. I do not accept the words of Rabbi Yehuda besodo be'ilon when it comes to the tree and the field. Mipnei shehen gedulei hakdesh, because I say they are me'ila because they derive direct nutrients from the ground or the tree. But it's only with regard to a field and tree that I don't see Rabbi Yehuda's point. In other words, I do agree when it comes to the chicken coop. But when it comes to the boar or to the bird cage, I do agree with Rabbi Yehuda that they came in later. They can go out, water can flow in, water can evaporate or be removed. It's not hekdesh. So that means that this brisa contradicts the previous brisa, the way we tried to interpret it, which tries to illuminate the Mishnah. So Hachi Kamar. So what is Rebbe trying to tell us? Hachi Kamar, this is what Rebbe's trying to tell us. Nirin Divrei Rebbe Yehuda, Le Rebbe Yossi Babur V'Shavach. Rebbe Yossi does agree with Rebbe Yehuda, according to Rebbe Yehuda Nasi, when it comes to the wet pit with water in it later, or the shavach, the chicken coop, the pigeon coop, with the birds coming in later. He agrees that they are not me'ila. V'af Rabbi Yossi lo nechlak. He does not disagree or love with it with Rabbi Yehuda. Ela v'soda v'ilon. He holds that they do become me'ila, the fruit and the grass. But even though Rabbi Yehuda does not, but he agrees with Rabbi Yehuda on the contents of the pigeon coop and the well. Okay, now a third brisa. Tana Rabbanan, Hekdishan Reikonin. If I donate an empty object, an empty cistern, an empty chicken coop, and then later on I put pigeons in or I put water in, the well itself, the cistern itself, is me'ila, but the water is not. The ein moilin kama shebetaychen, the stuff in it. Okay, Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Shimon, Omer. Now two more new players, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Shimon. Af moilin b'mashav v'saychan. What you put in does become hekdesh through contact with the hekdesh container. That's the easiest way to explain that. Omar Rava, now we're finished with the Brisa and we're back to Amarayim. Omar Rava, Rava says, Machloikes b'seida v'ilan, going back to the beginning, the Tanakama and Rav Elazar are talking about the tree and the field cases, and they, therefore, this new Brisa is parallel to the earlier Brisa. It's just different Tanayim, but the argument is the same. The Tanakama Salver Law to Rebbe Yehuda. The Tanakama in this Brisa agrees with Rebbe Yehuda in the previous Brisas that the field and the tree are not Me'ila. Rebbe Elazar, Rebbe Shimon Salver Law to Rebbe Yossi. But Reb Shimon and Reb Elazar in this new Brisa agree with Reb Yossi that the connection of the grass to the field or the fruit to the tree is greater than the connection of a bird going in and out, and therefore the grass and the tree, as we've explained several times, are me'ila because they derive direct nutrient from the underlying object given to the temple. Avo, babor, v'shavach. But when it comes to the container type objects, divrei hakol moilin behendi ein moilin b'meshav v'soichan, that the thing that can go in and out is not kodesh by mere contact with or being inside the container-like object. Okay, we're going to argue with that. Amalei Abaya says, Ella ha Tanya. What about the other Bryce? The same Bryce, really? Hekdishan Malay, and if you donate it when it has water in it or when birds are occupying the pigeon coop, Moelin Behen then both the pigeon coop and the pigeons are now hektish. You can use the pigeons for a bird korban. For Rebbe Eliezer, Rebbe Shimon Machalif, but Rebbe Shimon and Rebbe Eliezer, the son of Rebbe Shimon, changes his mind, and he says, no, even if you say, I'm giving a pigeon coop, and it happened to have birds in it, but you say I'm giving the pigeon coop, you may be excluding the pigeons. Okay, turn the page. But when it comes to the tree or the field, why would he change his mind? If the first time he said that they do have Kedusha, obviously they should still have Kedusha if they're there when you give it. Okay, is that clear? Even if it grows later, it's going to have Kedusha. Halachas kama v'kama. It should have Kedusha when you donate it. And now that's a contradiction to the pigeons in the pigeon coop. So that's a biased position. So Ella Omer Rava, so Rava, who always argues with the Baya, changes, he gives a new way of trying to understand it. Machlekes bebor v'shavach. The only time they argue is when it comes to the pit and the pigeon coop. Aval b'soda ve'ilan divrei hakol moilin behem b'moshe b'saychan. Whether it was there already growing or whether it grows later, nobody says it's not me'ila. Everybody agrees it is me'ila with the things that grow, but they only argue with the pigeon coop and the pit where the contents can go in later or earlier, and it's merely a container. Labor v'shavach, when it comes to the pit and the pigeon coop, Berekonim b'mai pligi, only when it was empty on donation are they arguing. Or b'malayan, but when it has stuff in it, b'ma pligi, what would they be arguing about? If it's donated full. Okay, berekonim. So the argument is as follows. I donate an empty pit, and later water goes in. Plige bepluk to the Rebbe Meir v'Rabbanan. This argument becomes the same argument that in an earlier generation Rebbe Meir argued with the other rabbis. The Tana Kama Sover Lo Rabbanan. The Tana Kama in the earlier generation in our generation agrees with the Rabbanan in the earlier generation. The Amre Ein Adam Mikana Davar Shalo Boli Olam, that you cannot donate something that doesn't exist. So if I donate an empty pit and it has no water in it, how could the water become Kodesh? It's not there. The water goes in later. It's just water. That's Hashem doing. But Hashem doesn't donate to himself. We donate to Hashem. We're going to find out. Just hold your question because we're going to find out that there's a difference. First of all, remember, we've learned many times. Reb Meir says you can deal with something that doesn't exist. A farmer can sell his crop to the that futures. We learned that that's a machlokes between Reb Meir and the Chachamim, and we actually paskin like Reb Meir. But there has to be an element of inevitability. If I plant seed, it's true there could be a hurricane and ruin the field, but there's an element of inevitability that the grass, that the wheat will grow. The only question is, what will it be worth in the future? And how am I going to pay for the inputs, the seed and the fertilizer and hiring the tractor, etc.? So that has an element of inevitability. On the other hand, if I say something that's not inevitable, I'll give to the Beis HaMikdash if Schwartz breaks his leg. There's no inevitability. Therefore, it can't. You understand the distinction? Okay, so that's where we're at. The Tanakama Sover Rabbanan, he holds like the rabbis. The Amre Ein Adam Makna Davar Shalobo Li'olam, that you can't give something that doesn't yet exist. V'Rebbe Elazar, v'Rebbe Shimon Sover, v'Rebbe Meir, that you can. The Amr Adam Makna Davar Shalobo Li'olam, you can donate something that doesn't exist.
So you can make hekdesh something that doesn't exist.
Correct. If it's reasonably certain. We'll see in just a second. So, Emor Deshma'at Leik Rebbe Meir. So, when does Rebbe Meir say you can donate or sell or deal with something that's not yet in existence? Kigon Peres Dekel, like the dates on a palm tree. Okay, the Avide Asu, which are almost certain to show up. Obviously, somebody could chop down the palm tree and the fruit isn't there. But 99 times out of 100, the normal circumstance and the flow of normal behavior, a palm tree will in due season produce fruit, coconuts, palm, dates, whatever.
What is the percentage cutoff rate?
There is none.
Inevitability.
There is none. I said virtual inevitability. Again, the earthquake could come. A hurricane could come.
So if you want to sell a cow with a blood in it,
then you can sell the baby and not sell the mother, even though it might die or be stillborn or whatever. Okay? So you could even, if sell a a baby that's not even a fetus yet. If you own both a bull and a cow, I could sell you. That's what happens when you hire a male horse, who's a great horse, wins lots of races. So you give him $250,000 for your stallion to shtup my mare because I want the babies to come. I'm buying. I'm literally buying the semen, but what I'm really buying is the offspring that's hopefully going to derive. And there are literally stallions that get $250,000 a pop. We have to pay, but they get it. All right. Me, Yamer, to also, but when it comes to pigeons in a pigeon coop or water in a cistern, is it truly inevitable that it'll, you could put up a bird feeder on out your window and no birds show up? This is really your question. Where do you draw the line? Okay, how inevitable is it that there'll be pigeons in the pigeon coop? So, Omarova, I can prove, at least in one circumstance, that it does have a very high degree of inevitability. B'maya in derech chatzero labor. That the water will flow into the pit because of the way the chatzer is constructed. In other words, you have slope. Your chatzer isn't absolutely level. Your chatzer slopes a couple of degrees to the bore on all sides. So every time it rains, it's inevitable that the water will run down and fill the bore. Okay?
But is rain an inevitability?
I would say that especially in a place like Israel, where there's a rainy season, that rain is inevitable. Okay? Or v'yonim haboin derech shavachol l'shavach. Or you have an overladen bird cage, dovecote, standing in your field, and they're laying eggs. The babies are being born. It's like an apartment in Harlem. It's just overladen with people. So you build a dovecote next door, an empty one. It's inevitable that one bird will find his way in, and then that others will follow him. So we have two situations, one with the water container and one with the pigeon container, where it is virtually certain that water will find its way in and pigeons will find its way in. And therefore, Reb Elazar would therefore agree with Reb Meir that if it's inevitable that the well or the cistern will fill with water in the reasonable certain future, that when you donate the cistern, you're also donating the water that's going to be there in a couple of days. Okay? Oh, b'malayim, b'mai plige. So when would they disagree? Okay? Kigon shehektish bor stamam. If I give just the pit, and I do not mean to include the water currently in it or water that may show up. In my mind, I don't mean to give them. I'm simply giving the container. Okay? V'Reb Elazar v'Rebbe Shimon Osava lo avua. And Reb Elazar Reb Shimon agrees with his father, Reb Shimon, the Amar Danin Din Gavoa Medin Hedya. That we look at commercial transactions with the temple, i.e., transferring property to the temple, with the same rules that would apply of transferring property from one human to another. The same rules apply to donations as to other human to human transactions. Madin Hedyot, when it comes to people, Matzei Omar, the seller of the cistern, could say to the buyer, Beira Zivne Loch, Maya Lo Zivne Loch. All I was selling you was the cistern itself. I was not selling you the water. Aftin Gavoya, so too, it's possible to donate the cistern to the temple, excluding the water therein. Okay? Of a Tanakama sover and done in Din Gavaya Midin Hedyot, that a transaction between you and God is substantially different than a transaction between you and another person, and maybe the rules are not the same. The Din Hedyot low, but just a minute, I tried to slip a fast one in. If I sell you a cistern full of water and I say $50 for the cistern, and you give me the $50, what do you expect?
Water.
You expect the water. I have a chachma. Oh, I only sold you the concrete basin. The water is not yours. Okay. V'hatanan. Now we go back to our Mishnah. What are the normal expectations? And our Mishnah said explicitly, Moicher bor, Moicher meimov, that the buyer expects the water. And when you sell him the cistern, the water is included. So this argument that you could have made an argument, that's BS. Okay? That's before sale, BS. Okay? Now, Amarava Masnisen Yechidohi. So we just did all these other Mishnayos, and we had all these machlaikas about the pigeons, about the water. Is it hekdesh? Is it not hekdesh? How can we even have those discussions if our Mishnah slams the door on other opinions? If our Mishnah says the birds go with the pigeon coop, the water goes with the cistern, the dung goes with the ashpa, and if that's a davar pashut, then how can you have these other arguments? We wasted the whole morning. So the Gemara explains, Omer Rava Masnisen Yechidohi. Our Mishnah is one man's opinion that happens to be recorded in the Mishnah, but that's not normative halacha. The Sanya, and I can prove it. How can I prove it? Macher bor, lo macher meimov. I have a brisa that says if I sell the cistern, the water is not included. That's a Tanakama, which is normally the Rov, the Rabbanan. Rab Nosson Omer, and an individual named Rab Nosson says, Meicher bor, Meicher meimov, if you sell the water, the pit, you sell the water. So now we have this brisa that we can draw on to make the statement that our Mishnah is Rab Nosson. It's a das yochid, and the issue of whether or not the water goes with the pit is debatable, because probably it doesn't, because that's the Tanakama in this brisa, which represents the Rabbanan. All right, so that's the work perfectly. The last word on the page ends that little discussion, so we'll stop there, and we will proceed on the morrow. For the record, I'm still doing it tomorrow. Reb Shimon will be back in Yirtz Hashem on Shabbos, and his surgery was successful. Huh? He had cataract surgery, second eye. It's interesting. I asked him, should I, you need me to drive you? The the place, they out,
Yeah,
provides transportation both ways.
Yeah, interesting. Well, you would think that.
very good.
Boy, he got a better deal than I got. Why?
No, when I did it, my wife drove.
Yeah, yeah. Wow.
And they won't release you. In
Right.
other words, unless the driver walks in and says, I'm here to pick up Rabbi Green, they won't let him leave.
Same thing with when Town Afterwards.
Right.
As a matter of fact, they wanted the telephone number who's going to take me home.
Right.
Yeah, I did